Welcome to Love and Abuse, the show about helping you identify poisonous communication and toxic behavior. You deserve to be treated with respect and kindness. That's why it's important that you learn to pinpoint manipulative and controlling behavior so that you keep your power and your sanity. I'm your host, Paul Coliani. Thank you for joining me for another episode of Love and Abuse. If you're a new listener, welcome to the show. If you've been with me a while, I'm so glad to have you back. All the information on this show is meant for educational purposes only. Always seek a professional for your mental health and well-being, and always pick your battles wisely. Standing up to potentially violent people is not necessarily a safe way to honor yourself. Just keep that in mind, and especially for today, because I received a message that goes like this. Paul, I have a question. What does one do if an emotionally abusive person won't accept that it's time to leave or move out? I've had the discussion that I need to separate for my own health with my husband, but he is fighting it and fighting it. He has turned into an angel and is emotionally manipulating me now with our kids and other things. Do you have an episode that speaks to this? Sorry if I missed it. I feel like I need to rise up an army against him to get him to understand he has to step away so that I can heal. My alternative is that I'll leave, but I was trying to minimize trauma to the kids. Thank you. All right, thank you for writing that. I am so sorry you're dealing with that, because when you state that it is over and you want the other person to leave, there should definitely be a discussion, of course, why do you want me to leave and what's going on? But after that discussion, when there is a conclusion, when you have reached an absolute, what I call an absolute, a clear yes or no, or clear wording that you are done, then it should be agreed upon. It may be reluctantly agreed upon, and there may be an argument or a fight or pushback or resistance, but when you say it's over, it's over. If you are not wanting to continue the relationship and you want to get out of the relationship, it is over. That's a conclusion. It's over. However, as you have learned, saying it's over doesn't mean it's over for a lot of people. Some people do want to resist it. Some people do want to fight against it. And when it comes to emotionally abusive people, they will often pull out their kindest, nicest, most pleasant behavior in order to show you that, see, this is how I can be. Now, this is not a healed part of them doing this. Well, if it is, then they've gone through a lot of work, and that's not exactly what we're talking about here today. I'm looking at the unhealed part coming out and manipulating. She said that this person is manipulating, her husband is manipulating her with their kids and other things. Even being the angel that you say he is part of the manipulation. You may know that already, but I'm just putting that out there. Even his kindness is part of the manipulation, because where was the kindness? Where was the respect before you said it's over? Where was it? It wasn't there, and that's the big issue here, is that what you didn't see before suddenly appears when you are presenting them with something that they don't want. And some people don't like that. Some people will think that's a threat to the control they have over the situation and even over you. And that threat is them fearing that they're going to lose what they have control over and lose someone that they believe they are loving in probably a healthy way. I do believe that emotionally abusive people do care about the people that they are hurting. Believe it or not, some people won't believe this, but emotionally abusive people, most of them, I do believe, do care about who they're hurting. They just don't know how to love in a healthy way. My version of loving someone in a healthy way is honoring their path to happiness. It's supporting their decisions and supporting whatever path they want to walk. And hopefully they allow me to walk that path with them. But when they're ready to walk their path alone, part of loving them is supporting them doing that as well. This usually doesn't happen with difficult or abusive relationships, because what ends up happening is when that person or when one person is ready to walk their path, typically the victim of the emotional abuse, when that person is ready to walk their path without the other person in their life, the other person can become fearful, insecure, controlling, angry, and all kinds of things, which we're all capable. We're all capable of doing this. Maybe not so much the manipulation like emotionally abusive people are, but we're all capable of all of these behaviors. The problem is the more fearful and insecure you are, and the less you've dealt with your unhealthy coping mechanisms, like if you have unhealthy coping skills, then what you're going to do is reach in your bag of behavior and pull out something maybe emotionally abusive. The emotionally abusive person wants to control or change the person they're with, and they'll do it any way they can think of in order to keep what they believe as control of the situation, for it to be the way they want it to be. I look at emotionally abusive people as wanting things the way they want it, regardless of what you want. And if you look at every situation in your past or every difficult interaction with an emotionally abusive person, you can usually narrow it down to them wanting things the way they want them, regardless of what you want. Doesn't mean 100% of the time, because there are people that do behavior that make it look like you're getting what you want, but then they throw some guilt trip in there, or they make you feel bad for some reason. There are all kinds of behaviors out there, and this is what we do on this show, is we pick apart the behaviors and do what we can to identify what our best response is to those behaviors, or preventative is to those behaviors. If we can prevent those behaviors from the other person, then that's great. It's hard to do, but there are people that can do it. And I don't talk about too many preventative measures on this show, but there are preventative measures. Typically, though, it comes with someone's personality. A lot of people that listen to this show, I'm going to guess, an educated guess, because I've talked to people, I've heard from them, but I'm going to guess that they are probably not the dominant personality, where if someone does something against them, they say, hey, if that ever happens again, you're out of here or I'm out of here. That's probably not the type of personality that you'll find in the typical emotional abuse victim. They'll probably not say something like that. If they did, their relationships will be a lot different. And I'm not saying that you need to turn into this person. If it's not in your personality, this is not the person I'm suggesting you be. However, if you were that person, you would find probably fewer times where you are in an emotionally abusive situation, where someone is doing behavior that is hurtful or making you feel guilty or putting you down or belittling you or insulting you, any of those behaviors. When there's the preventative measure of a more dominant personality, and I don't mean that in a bad way, I mean a leader of yourself. You are a leader in your own life. You lead yourself knowing what you want, knowing that your boundaries are sacred and that you will honor those boundaries and you will not let other people cross them. You know, you give leniency here and there. It's not a hard and fast rule for some people, but some people it is. But if you have more confidence in what you know to be true and good for you, you walk through life not taking anyone's crap. You don't take their manipulations. You don't take their guilt trips. You don't take any of it, because you'll say something like, hey, I know what you're doing and you need to stop right now because I'm not having it. There are some personalities like that, and those personalities have a better chance of not getting into an emotionally abusive relationship. Doesn't mean they do that, though. It doesn't mean that everyone can avoid that kind of relationship. In fact, I've heard from more strong, independent people that knew they were that kind of person before the relationship started, but were incrementally broken down and over time felt more and more of a shell of their former self. And that's what happens as you get into these relationships, and some people are so either consciously or unconsciously clever or crafty in a manipulative or controlling way that they slowly break down who you are into that shell, into an emptier you, a less confident you, a less decisive you, a less trusting in yourself you, or trusting in anyone else you, because they isolate you and they put you in a place where you depend on them. And it's just, I don't even have to explain the nightmare scenario that can unfold. But that's what happens. I've heard from so many confident people that used to feel good about themselves and then later on started doubting themselves after they got into a relationship like this. My goal is to help you regain that confidence and find that power that you used to have, or if you didn't have it before, start to build it. Start to put it in your life. Start to feel good knowing that you have boundaries and that you are going to enforce those boundaries, and you're not going to take anyone's crap. I want to swear right now, but it's a friendly show, but you know what I mean. You're not going to take it. So this is how some relationships can go. And yes, the person who does that might end up with some, kind people, maybe respectful, but maybe they'll cross the line every now and then and they'll get an earful. They'll hear the person say, no, you can't do that. That is disrespectful. You are crossing the line and you better back off. And then the rest of the time, that person is loving and kind and caring, but when they cross the line, they're going to hear it. Those relationships can work, and they do work. This is the kind of relationship I'm in right now. We both have our boundaries. We both know our boundaries, and we are both more forgiving of each other when those boundaries are crossed, but we still know them enough to say, whoa, back off, because you're getting too close. You're getting to that point where it's starting to upset me, or you're starting to be too aggressive. I mean, we don't have this kind of conversation. We don't say those words, but we will talk about it or have an argument about it, whatever it is, but it is respectful of those boundaries because we know there is miscommunication and we just have to get through that. No relationship that I know of is perfect, but we do our best. And I think it's helpful when you have someone that also does their best and also has good intentions and is kind and respectful and understands boundaries and values your values. They may not agree with your values, but at least they value them so that they don't violate them. When you have two people that do that for each other, then you have a healthy, or at least a healthier than normal relationship, or a healthier than a difficult relationship for sure. But coming back to where I was going with this person is conclusions or conclusivity, if that's a word, and absolute. If you can be clear and absolute in what you're telling someone so that they understand that you mean business and there's no ambiguity, there's no vagueness in what you're describing or what you're saying, then you've done your part. And what I mean by this, in this person's case who wrote, she said, he won't accept that it's time to leave or move out. He won't accept it. I've had the discussion that I need to separate for my own health with my husband, but he's fighting it and fighting it. My question to you is, have you been conclusive? Have you been absolute? Because there's a big difference in the following. The first one is, I think you really need to move out for my health. I think that it's important that we separate for a while. I believe I need this for my own health. It is important to me. I believe I need to do this, and will you please honor my request to move out? That is the first example. this example isn't very conclusive. It isn't very absolute. You may have heard it as conclusive and absolute. Well, she really wants him to move out. So that should be his cue. That should make him understand what she wants, and he should follow suit. And I wouldn't disagree. But the problem is when you have someone that is used to controlling you and trying to change you and having things their way, they almost always look for an in. They almost always look for something to latch onto. And what I mean by that, they're looking for a chance. They're looking for that one thing that you said that lets them know there's still an opportunity here to stay when you want them to leave, or keep this thing going when you want it to end, or there's still love there when there really isn't. It's the ambiguity. The ambiguity leaves an opportunity for many people to think there's a chance. It reminds me of the movie Dumb and Dumber. It's not a movie I'm saying that you should watch because it's not necessarily a mature movie and it has a lot of stupid humor, but there's a lot of funny parts. There's a part in it with Jim Carrey near the end where he really likes this girl. And he's been pursuing her and she's been sort of rejecting him. And he finally asks, what are the chances that you and I can be a thing? And she decided to be honest with him and say, well, 1 out of 1,000,000. And there was a pause, and he looks at her, and he does some supposed calculations in his head or something. And then he says, so you're saying there's a chance? And then he gets excited thinking that 1 in 1,000,000 is that chance. He has an opportunity. He has a 1 in 1,000,000 chance, but there is a chance. And, that's a funny part of the movie, and I'm sorry if I gave it away and you're excited to see it, but it's a great part that highlights what can happen in some people's minds without, conclusions, without absolutes. Because if she said, there is absolutely no chance that we'll ever be together, that can't be misinterpreted. I mean, it can. Some people will, but that is very clear. There is no chance is very clear, and it's absolute. 1 in 1,000,000, there's a chance. When there's no chance, there's no chance. So that's what I mean by being very clear. Don't be vague, don't be ambiguous, even though the example I just gave before the movie quote was saying, I really think that you need to leave. That's not conclusive at all. I really think is just something that you think, because if you can think that, you could probably think other things. There might be other things you're thinking of. So as the emotionally abusive person in your life, I'm going to help you think of other things so that you can stop thinking this way. Because if that's what you think now, I'm so used to helping you change your mind, I'm going to change it to something that benefits me. So you can't leave this open. When you know for sure what you want, even if you don't know for sure what you want, I think it's important to be conclusive and absolute. So the second example where you are conclusive and absolute is saying, this is over, you need to go, I don't want you here anymore, and I need you to go so I can heal. I need you to move out. Period. That's it. End of discussion. And when they say, yeah, but wait a minute, can't we talk about this? No, I've already thought about it, and this is what I want. And you can even ask the question, am I clear? Do you understand? They may say, no, this is not good for me. I don't want this. We can work this out. Let's go to therapy. You come back to your confident conclusion, your confident absolute, and you say, no, this is what I want. I've thought about it. It doesn't matter what you say. I'm here. I've already reached this point. Do you understand? And they might say, no, I don't understand. Well, what don't you understand? And they may give you a story. Well, I promise I can change, or I don't think you're thinking clearly. No matter what they say, be clear. To this person, this is what I'm asking you. You may have done this. You may have already done this. And I'm going to talk about that in a minute too. But be clear. Be absolute. Don't leave any door cracked open. 1 in a million is a chance. When you say, I think it's over, there's a chance. When you say, I think we'd be better apart, there's a chance. They look for these chances. They want to hear these chances. Their radar is on detecting these chances. I mean, I used to do this. I used to hear this stuff. I used to justify things that weren't true. I used to make it true in my mind. Even in my 20s, I used to think that girls liked me when I kept pestering them. It never worked out, but I used to believe if I kept pestering them that their frustration with me or their irritation with me would eventually turn around. I worked on it, and it doesn't work. It doesn't work. But they weren't clear with me, and I'm not blaming them. I'm not saying that they should have been clear, although, yes, they should have been clear, and at the same time, I shouldn't have been pestering them. I shouldn't have been irritating them. I wasn't taught not to, and they probably were taught to be kind and respectful and not be mean and not say anything that really hurts someone's feelings, not say things like that or whatever. But the point is, I'm here today telling you that it's important when someone doesn't get it, you have to be clear. When someone doesn't let it go, or when they find what they think are possibilities or chances, you need to make clear that there is no chance or there definitely is a chance, whatever your absolute is. But it's a clear yes and no. And I know it can be difficult to get to that point because you may not know. And this is a part of this too. You may not know if you are clear inside yourself. Well, I don't know if we should separate. I don't know if divorce is the answer. But this is where it's important that you make a decision anyway, and you stick with it. Because if you're with or around someone that makes your decisions hard because they try to talk you out of it or talk you into something else or make you think that you're thinking wrong, then you have to be crystal clear with people like that. It's important that you're crystal clear, or at least as clear as you can possibly be. Yes, there's a chance that they'll still misinterpret or purposefully misinterpret it, but as long as you're clear and you're congruent about being clear, congruent about your words. And what I mean by that is what you say, you mean, and your behavior follows suit. If you don't love them anymore, you say, I don't love you anymore. This isn't going to work. I already know it's not going to work. Well, we can try to make it work. We haven't tried hard enough. You can say, it doesn't matter. I don't want to try anymore. It can be hurtful to be cold. That's what it sounds like. It sounds like you're being cold. How about, I do love you, but this relationship isn't working for me. Because you can still have love for someone and still not want to be around them or near them. You are hurtful. I don't want to be around you. You are hurtful. But I can change. But you haven't. So now I've reached my limit and I have nothing left. I have nothing left to give. I can't give you any more. I'm sorry, but that's just the way it is. And that's very difficult for many victims of emotional abuse because they're the ones that usually try harder. They're the ones that usually have more compassion and more empathy, and they're generous and kind and caring and supportive. There are all these wonderful things. And to be anything but that is a leap into someone else's body. It is something that they've never had to do, have to be cold to someone and sound like they're being mean. But it isn't being mean or cold to them. It's being confident in what you want for yourself. And if they aren't getting the message through kindness, then they have to get the message through your confidence. They have to get the message through you knowing who you are and what you want. Because they're not getting the message, or they're choosing not to hear the message that you've already conveyed. So as the relationship continues and you don't want it to, in this person's case, she doesn't want it to, you have to be very, very clear and don't back off, because as soon as you back off, there's a chance. There's a chance they're going to see it as an opportunity to get the situation back the way they want it. There's a chance to put in their control measures again. And once those control measures are in place, you may lose the opportunity to follow through with what you know you need to do for you. And so coming back to this person's question, he's fighting me. He won't leave. He won't move out. So this is where your congruence comes in. You've said, hopefully by now, this is what I want. I want you to move out. And then you might ask the question, do you understand? Or even better, will you honor my wishes? Will you honor my request? Will you honor what I want? That is a great question. Will you honor what I want? Because if they say no, then you know what you're dealing with. If they won't even honor what you want, that's not love, in my opinion. That is someone wanting to control you and get the relationship to the point they want so that they have the reins. If they have the reins, they're okay. If they don't, they're not. Them having the reins means you don't have much free will. Doesn't mean you don't have free will, it just means some of your free will is taken away, because if you really want to leave or have them leave and that situation doesn't happen, then what you want doesn't seem to matter, and that's important. What a lot of emotionally abusive people don't get is that when they support the other person's path, even if that path is something they disagree with, the person who is being supported will see that as a loving gesture. That's what a lot of emotionally abusive people don't get. They believe it's more important to control or manipulate to make sure that the other person does what they want them to do, instead of allowing the other person to do what they want them to do. But when you allow someone to do what they want to do, it feels more loving, and you feel more connected, and you feel supported, and you want to be with the person that allows you to do what you want to do. So emotionally abusive people have it backwards. They think control and change is how they keep the relationship and keep the connection and keep them in their life. But it's backwards. It's a backwards model. And it's not their fault. They were probably taught that from other people. Or maybe it is their fault and they're doing bad behavior on purpose. But either way, if they follow the backwards model of trying to control or change and make things the way they want it, and it doesn't matter how you want it, then you're going to be repelled. You're going to feel oppressed. You're going to want very little to do with what they're doing to you in the relationship, and you're going to want to get out of it, or at least get away from the bad behavior. When all they have to do is turn it around and say to themselves, I should just support what they want to do, even if I disagree with what they want to do. Because when you do that for another person, that person's going to feel like they're being loved and supported. And people who feel like they're being loved and supported want more of that. They want less control, and they want less manipulation. They want less abusive behavior, and they want more love and support, especially for who they are and who they want to be. I know you want to be supported for who you are, who you want to be, your hobbies, your friends, your quiet time, the balance that you find in life. You want to be supported in all areas of life. Not that everything has to be supported 100%, but at least most areas of your life, someone else is there saying, hey, I'm here for you. Hey, what do you need? What can I do to help you along the path that you're walking? I think that's a great way to look at relationships. How can I show up for you in a way that is loving, kind, caring, supportive, compassionate, empathetic? How can I show up in those ways? You can probably list 1,000 things that they can do. And how many do they do? Maybe they do a few, but the rest of the time, they're pulling all these shenanigans. That doesn't help the relationship. It doesn't help you love them more. It makes you love them less. Love dissolves through control and manipulation. Love dissolves with emotional abuse. again, coming back to this letter, let me just say that when you've been absolute, when you've been clear, when you say, I've had enough, it's time for you to go, I think the important question is, will you honor that? And getting a clear yes or no from them, and coming back to that question over and over again, if they keep saying, but, all I want to know is if you'll honor that. Will you honor it? I just need to know, yes or no. If you don't want to honor it, then I'll know what your position is, and I'll know that you don't want to honor my wishes. Now, when you say that, hopefully they get it. I just need to know, yes or no, will you honor this? Will you honor my path? Will you honor my wishes? Hopefully they'll say, I guess I have no choice. And then you'll have to ask for an absolute. Is that a yes? Just tell me, is that a yes? Yes, of course, I will. Fine. You might hear that. But at least now you know. So that's the first part, being clear, being absolute, and getting an absolute response as well. You may never get one. A lot of manipulative people don't like to give absolute responses because that makes them responsible for what they said. They don't want to be responsible for their responses, a lot of people. So what you need to do is try to get them to respond. It's sort of like when I talk about kids sometimes. Some parents will say, hey, the garbage needs to go out. And the kid will say, okay. And then there's the assumption from the parent that the kid will take the garbage out. But in reality, there's no clear communication. There's only an assumption. So instead of the parent saying, hey, the garbage needs to go out, the parent should say, will you take the garbage out? And then the kid has to say, yes, I will. And then the parent might have to follow up with, when will you do it? And the kid might have to say, I'll do it when I can. And then the parent might have to follow up and say, what time will you do it? It could go on and on, but the idea is to get an agreement. It's to get a commitment. And it's the same thing in adult-to-adult relationships. Get agreement when there's been difficulty getting agreement. With this person who may not leave, they may get an agreement and he still may not leave. Then we're at a point where my next suggestion is to be congruent and follow up with how you feel and what you said. If you want him to leave, then don't share the bed with him anymore. Go into another bedroom, go onto the couch, or have him go into the bedroom or another couch, and don't show bonding anymore. Don't show relationship kindness anymore. I mean, you can be respectful in each other's company, but you can't be in that relationship anymore because you're trying to end it, at least in this person's case. She wants a divorce. So she is trying to end it, and she's trying to do it in a way that has the least amount of stress and tension, but he's not leaving. So her congruent behavior would be to follow through with what she's already said. I want you to leave. I don't want this marriage anymore. So she may have to start separating in the same household and making it clear that she is definitely out of this marriage. Because if he doesn't get it, or he doesn't want to get it, then the next step is to do the physical act of separation, even though you're in the same house. And if he still doesn't get it, then the next step might have to be contacting a lawyer, going through the steps anyway, and then getting a hold of a realtor. I can't guide you here at this point. Maybe you moving out, maybe something else, but there's got to be a point where you both agree that it's time to move forward. If you both don't agree, then basically you have to take the steps. You have to take the steps that are right for you, because now he's no longer agreeing. He's no longer part of the process. You just have to go through the process yourself. And so that's kind of where I take you with this, is that you be clear, you be absolute, you follow through, and you keep moving in that direction. You don't go back to where you were. You don't be who you used to be with him, because now you're moving the relationship in a new direction, which means you have to show him that you're for real. You are clear in your head. You can't be convinced otherwise. And you keep moving in that direction. And let me just address the last thing this person said. She said, I'm trying to minimize trauma to the kids. You have to remember that kids always use role modeling to be the person they're going to be when they grow up. And all that means is they are learning from their role models. They are learning from you how to handle a difficult relationship. If you have been handling a difficult relationship by always giving in, by always being submissive or passive, or always doing what the controlling, manipulative person always wants you to do, that's how they're learning to be in their own relationship. And I'm not trying to say that to blame you, but I do want you to understand that the more kids are exposed to bad communication or unhealthy or toxic situations and behaviors, they're more likely to do those things themselves or something else that doesn't serve them very well. That's why it's important for you to do the right thing for you. When you feel like you need to do something right for you in the relationship, then you have to go in that direction. And by you doing that, it teaches your kids that when they're in a bad situation, they need to go in that direction as well. And let me just say this, there's no getting around the trauma for your kids. There's nothing. You can't do anything to get around the trauma for your kids. And I know that's just the worst news you could hear, but if you stay together, there's trauma. If you break up, there's trauma. If you move apart, there's trauma. If you don't move, there's trauma. There's trauma anywhere you look, everywhere you look. So the best thing to do is be the best role model you can, as if everything you do, you would want your kid to do too. I hope that makes sense, because if you can follow through for your own health, for your own benefit, your kids are going to see that it's a good idea to follow through with your decisions and do things that are right for you, for their own sanity and well-being and their own mental health. So either way, your kids are going to be traumatized, but we all grow up and we all deal with our trauma in different ways, and we have dysfunctions, and hopefully we have a stable person that we could talk to and share things with and won't bite our heads off for saying things like, hey, I had sex for the first time. Hey, I had a drink for the first time. Hey, I had drugs for the first time, or the second or the 100th time. When the kids grow up and we can be there for them and be a very balanced person, be a balanced role model in their life, then hopefully that will rub off too, and they'll be more free to express themselves, not only to us as parents, but also to their loved ones and to other people in their life, so that they can have real communication and real relationships based on trust and honesty. And hopefully they meet people that are trusting and honest. And if they don't, if they meet someone that's difficult, like the situation you're in right now, they'll know what to do because they saw you do it. So I hope you got some value from this episode. Thank you so much for writing. I know it's a tough situation. I know it's very tough having invested in a marriage and a house together and kids together, and you have all these commitments, but sometimes it's time. That's what my first girlfriend told me when, after 13 years we were together, she said, it's just time. There was nothing else she could say. She fell out of love, and it was time. It was time to move on. And sometimes that happens. And it's a real pain, and it's real painful, and sometimes you just got to do it. I wish you much strength and healing through this. Thank you for writing, and thank you for joining me for another episode of Love and Abuse. Share this with others that might benefit. Love and Abuse is the official podcast of the Mean Workbook, an assessment and healing guide for difficult relationships. The workbook provides an evaluation of your relationship based on a 200-point assessment. If you're in a difficult situation and would like to pinpoint the unhealthy behaviors causing you to leave so many interactions feeling bad, let the workbook help you discover the specific components of bad behavior and put into words what you're experiencing. If you believe you're the emotionally abusive person and you want to change that behavior, head over to healedbeing.com and start the Healed Being program. This show exists to remind you that you are not alone and you're not going crazy. You deserve to be treated with respect and kindness. You deserve honesty and sincerity. You deserve to be treated as worthy and significant. Because you are. Thanks again for joining me. We'll talk again soon.